I only know how long I sat in that chair, because the time display constantly hovering in my peripheral vision. As the hours trudged past in the ever-present daylight of our orbit, what was there to do other than sit back and contemplate the hopeless facts? Did it really matter why the other crew weren't filling the rest of the seats around me? Did it really matter whether or not the landers ever left the docking bay? There was no mission anymore. By then, the surface of the Earth would have been more than half consumed by thunderstorms and boiling lakes of lava. Either humanity had found another home among the stars without us, or they had vanished into the fire, poisoned atmosphere of the rest of the planet. Earthside HQ no longer existed. Our superior officers would have died over a century ago. They would have given us up for dead long before then. We were floating in the cold vacuum of space, alone, light years from home, and likely last of our kind. Our kind, I thought. I may have been using that term prematurely. I panned over to the Deck 3 cryochamber status. 73% had flatlined. 10% showed signs of brain hemorrhage. The rest showed vital readouts offline. It was nothing short of a miracle that I had woke up at all, let alone healthy. Even so, I don't know if I would have considered myself fortunate. That was a useless gesture, but I decided to check for survivors. Really, given the circumstances, any gesture short of acceptance and death would have been useless. Still, if I had to rein myself to my grim fate, I figured I might as well go out with some company. It may have been cruel to wake them, make them aware of the situation, but the thought of being the last man alive just left me with a sour feeling in my stomach. I wound up relying on a flashlight a few yards into the Deck 3 descent. At some point, the energy grid had failed, and the sector switched to the backup generators. Depending on how long ago the system had redirected power, if the lights were any reliable indication, it would have been no wonder that the cryo stage malfunctioned. I can't imagine the pain through which they must have gone. The thought made me shudder. I turned the flashlight on each cryopod as I passed by. A few looked like they had died peacefully, but only a few. Most wore frozen faces of suffering. Some with tears turned to eyes streaking down their faces. Some of their harnesses had released, leaving their corpses leaning their bruised foreheads against the glass shields, neck broken and twisted against their own body weight. I even tripped over one whose shield had released and depressurized before clearing his system of the blood insulation solution. His corpse lay rotting in a half-curled heap where he had tumbled forward. There are no decomposer organisms in space. Bodies don't rot the way they do on Earth. Instead, he looked dried up and brittle, mummified, as though the slightest nudge would cause him to collapse into dust. With my attention fixated on the tragedy before me, I almost didn't hear it. A faint call just a few yards down the walkway, barely above a whisper. My heart leapt and I rushed to the sound. Sadly, though, my hopes were dashed as I looked at his face. Frostbitten beyond treatment, chattering teeth, in an airy, raspy whisper. He pleaded.
Cold. So cold. Please.
His name is James Henrich, a young cadet fresh from the Hirschman Aerospace Training Facility in Nuremberg, Germany. This was his first mission out of Earth's orbit. We had spoken at length many times before and after launch. He was an eager and attentive listener. I liked him right from the start. His pod had sprung a coolant leak. It had already practically iced over the pods to his left and right. It was probably dangerous to even stand as close as I did. Cardiovascular neuroregulator system had been keeping his heart beating, but it wouldn't help much longer. In truth, it had only prolonged his suffering. All I could do for him was to put him out of his misery. He was such a good kid. He had such a bright future. When I looked at his face, I saw my son. Saw him as he might have looked on the day I should have returned. Saw the sorrow on his face when he realized Daddy would never come home. It was all I could think about as I tearfully and hesitantly tapped in the command to stop the neuroregulator. "It's okay, kid. Just sleep now. It'll all be over soon," I told him, longingly placing my hand against the freezing glass. I spent his final moments with him as his heart slowed to a stop, and he closed his eyes for the last time. I never looked away. It was then the gravity of my situation hit me. I truly was alone.